The little girl's voice carried through the darkness like a prayer. Hush now, my darling, don't you cry. The stars will watch over you
Wake
tonight.
up! We have to go!
7-year-old Lyra Ashford
Please,
sat in
wake
the
up
cargo
now!
bay of the colony transport ship,
Do not
Horizon's
be
Promise.
afraid. I will
Her back
protect you.
pressed against
trust
cold
you.
metal.
Good. Stay
Around
close.
her, 126
Let's go.
other children huddled in
Evac team,
makeshift
move!
beds.
Corridor ahead.
Refugees,
Copy. Flank secure.
orphans,
Keep them
the
covered.
forgotten
Stay
remnants
with
of
me,
a
kid.
war
Almost
that
there.
had consumed their homeworld 3 months ago. Lyra sang because it was all she had left. Her mother had taught her this lullaby before the bombardment, before the shelters collapsed, before everything turned to ash and silence. The younger children nearby had stopped crying. They listened instead. In the void of space surrounded by strangers heading toward an uncertain future at the Meridian Relief Colony, her voice became their anchor. A reminder that someone still cared enough to sing. Sleep now, my darling. Dream of home. Tomorrow brings us. The ship lurched violently. Lyra's song died in her throat as emergency klaxons screamed to life. Red warning lights bathed the cargo bay in crimson pulses. The younger children screamed. Some of the older ones, 11, 12 years old, tried to calm them, but terror spread like wildfire through the confined space. Through the reinforced viewport, Lyra saw them. 3 ships, dark angular vessels covered in jagged armor plating that seemed to drink in the starlight. Zarakthi pirates. She'd heard the adults whisper about them during the journey. Raiders who preyed on refugee transports, who sold children to labor colonies in the outer systems where no one asked questions and no one came looking. The Promise shuddered again as weapons fire raked across its hull. Sparks erupted from damaged conduits overhead. The artificial gravity flickered, and for a terrifying moment, Lyra felt herself lifting from the deck before the systems compensated. In the forward section, Captain Maris's voice crackled through the intercom. Calm, professional, lying through his teeth about how everything would be fine, how the escort ships would protect them, how they just needed to stay calm. Lyra knew better. She'd heard that same tone before. The evacuation coordinator on her home world had used it right before the shelter took a direct hit. Adults always tried to protect children with lies wrapped in soothing voices. The ship's engines screamed in protest. Through the viewport, she watched one of the escort frigates, the ISS Resolute, wheel around to engage the pirates. Energy beams cut through the void like angry scars across the fabric of space itself. For a moment, hope flickered in Lyra's chest. Then the pirates opened fire on the transport itself. The world tilted sideways. Gravity failed completely this time. The children tumbled through the air, crying out in terror as they bounced off walls and ceiling. Lyra grabbed a support strut as the ship began to spin. Her small fingers ached from the grip, but she held on. Through the chaos, she saw the escort frigate taking hits, shields failing one section at a time, hull breaches venting atmosphere into space like blood from a wound. The Resolute's captain made a choice that would haunt Lyra's dreams for years. The frigate threw itself between the transport and the pirates, took the full brunt of their weapons, absorbed energy that should have vaporized the Promise and its cargo of helpless children, bought them seconds, maybe a minute. Captain Maris used every second. The Promise jumped to emergency faster than light, engines howling like wounded animals, systems failing across every deck. A blind leap into the void with no time to calculate coordinates, no way to know where they'd emerge. When the ship dropped back into normal space, the silence was worse than the alarms. Lyra pulled herself to the viewport, her small hands leaving sweaty prints on the transparent aluminum. The stars looked wrong. The constellations were unfamiliar, twisted into shapes that no navigation chart had ever shown. And there in the distance, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Dozens of satellites, ancient, covered in strange markings that seemed to shift and writhe when she looked at them directly. All of them broadcasting the same pulsing red light that painted the viewport in shades of warning, a warning they had already ignored. The Promise drifted past them, engines, dead life support, failing 127 children aboard, and no way home, no way forward, no way to do anything but wait in the dark and the cold. Lyra pressed her small hand against the cold viewport and began to sing again. Quieter now, just for herself, just to prove she was still alive. Hush now, my darling, don't you cry. But the tears came anyway. Admiral Theron Drake stood on the bridge of the ISS Dominion, staring at the emergency beacon that had just appeared on his tactical display like an accusation. 47 years old. Cathra warrior caste. Scales the color of gunmetal, metal marked with scars from 3 decades of Imperial service. Eyes that had seen too many battles. Buried too many friends. Lost too much to ever feel truly whole again. His first officer, Commander Seraph Valen, approached with the careful steps of someone delivering news they knew would change everything. Alarion, blue-skinned, silver eyes that reflected the bridge lights with unsettling intensity. Sir, the beacon originated from the Refugee Transport Horizons Promise. They were supposed to arrive at Meridian Colony 6 hours ago. Drake's jaw tightened. The muscles along his scaled neck tensed in a way that Valen had learned meant trouble. Status life support critical. Engines offline. They're adrift in... Valen paused. Her fingers danced across her console, checking and rechecking the data, as if hoping it would change. When she looked up, her expression had shifted from professional concern to something closer to dread. Admiral, they're in the Theta 7 sector. The bridge went quiet. Not the comfortable silence of a well-run ship, but the heavy silence of people who'd just heard a death sentence pronounced. Every officer knew what that meant. Theta 7, the empty zone, the region where ships disappeared and were never found, where ancient warning beacons broadcast messages in dead languages, where 300 years ago humanity had supposedly destroyed itself in a civil war so brutal that even the ruins had been quarantined by mutual agreement of every surviving civilization. How many aboard? Drake's voice cut through the silence like a blade. 127 children, ages 5 through 12. No adult crew survived the pirate attack. Valen hesitated. Sir, according to the beacon telemetry, they have maybe 20 minutes of breathable air left. After that, she didn't need to finish. Everyone on the bridge understood what happened when life support failed. The cold would take them first, hypothermia within minutes, then the CO2 buildup, then the slow gasping death as oxygen ran out. Drake closed his eyes, just for a moment, just long enough to see another face, another child. 15 years ago, his son had been 8 years old, dark eyes full of curiosity and joy, a laugh that could light up a room. The plague that swept through the outer colonies had taken him in 3 days. Drake had been commanding a fleet operation 2 systems away. By the time he'd arrived racing through hyperspace with every engine pushed past safety limits, it was over. His wife had died holding their boy's hand, whispering that daddy would come soon, lying because sometimes lies were all you had left to give. He'd sworn he'd never let children suffer alone again, never let distance or duty or regulations prevent him from doing what was right when lives hung in the balance. When he opened his eyes, his decision was already made. Assemble a rescue fleet, 4 ships, fast escorts with medical facilities. We launch in 20 minutes. Admiral, Valen said carefully, her tone walking the fine line between respect and warning. Imperial regulations state that the Theta 7 sector is forbidden territory. Entry requires authorization from Grand Fleet Command. Then get me authorization. Sir, that could take days, maybe weeks. The bureaucracy alone... Drake turned to face her fully. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but every word carried the weight of 3 decades of command experience and the absolute certainty of a man who'd already lost everything that mattered once. Those children have hours. Not days, not weeks. Assemble the fleet commander. That's an order. Valen held his gaze for a long moment. In her silver eyes, Drake saw understanding, acceptance, perhaps even approval. Then she nodded sharply. Yes, sir. Assembling rescue fleet now. Around them, the bridge erupted into controlled chaos as officers moved to their stations. Drake watched them work these people he'd led through a dozen campaigns and felt the weight of what he was asking them to do. Breaking regulations, violating treaties, risking their careers and possibly their lives to save children they'd never met in a sector of space that every civilization in the galaxy had agreed to avoid. But some things were more important than regulations. Some choices defined who you were. 18 minutes later, 4 Imperial ships broke orbit and accelerated toward the Forbidden Zone at maximum burn. The Dominion led the formation, a heavy cruiser, 300 meters of Imperial engineering and firepower. Behind it came 3 escort frigates, the Valiant, the Steadfast, and the Unwavering. Each one crewed by veterans who'd volunteered without hesitation when they learned what the mission entailed. On the bridge, Drake reviewed his crew assignments, each station manned by people he trusted with his life. More importantly, people he trusted with the lives of 127 children. Commander Seraph Valen at Tactical, 20 years of service, calm under fire. A gift for seeing 3 moves ahead in any combat situation. She'd lost her own family to raiders years ago. She understood what this mission meant. Dr. Kalen Oryx at the science station. Zelani, tentacles instead of arms, but those tentacles could operate 6 different instruments simultaneously while analyzing data faster than most computers. The finest xenobiologist in the fleet. If the children needed specialized medical care for unknown exposure, Kalen would provide it. Specialist Jax Torin at sensors. Vorthan, four-armed, yellow eyes that never missed a detail in the sensor data streams. He'd been tracking anomalies in the Theta-7 sector for years, collecting data that officially didn't exist. If anyone could navigate the forbidden zone safely, it was him. ETA to the transport's last known position, Drake asked. 2 hours at maximum burn, Valen replied. Her fingers moved across her console with practiced efficiency. But Admiral, we're approaching the beacon perimeter. Whatever's broadcasting those warnings will be in range in approximately 3 minutes. The view screen shifted to show the ancient satellites. 73 of them, according to Jax's count, arranged in a perfect geometric pattern that enclosed nearly 50 star systems in a three-dimensional grid, creating a barrier that no ship could cross without receiving their warning. Each satellite was ancient beyond easy measure, covered in markings that seemed to shift when observed directly, as if the symbols themselves were alive and aware of being watched. Put the transmission through, Drake ordered. The bridge speakers crackled with static. Then in flawless Imperial Standard, a language that hadn't existed when these satellites were supposedly built, a calm mechanical voice filled the bridge. Warning, Terran quarantine zone. Entry prohibited by Galactic Treaty 2387X. Violation will result in immediate response. Turn back, turn back, turn back. The message repeated, same words, same inflectionless tone. But underneath it, Drake heard something else. Not a threat, a plea, as if whoever had programmed these beacons had desperately wanted people to listen. Computer, Drake said, search Imperial Archives for Galactic Treaty 2387X. The computer's response was immediate. Searching, no records found. Drake frowned. That shouldn't be possible. The Empire maintained obsessive records of every treaty, every agreement, every accord signed in 3,000 years of expansion. Expand search parameters, include all treaties, agreements, and accords for the past 5,000 years. Cross-reference with every known civilization database. Searching, no records found. That's impossible, Kalen said, his tentacles coiling with the Zilani equivalent of agitation. The Empire maintains complete records of every treaty, every agreement, every diplomatic interaction going back to, apparently not this one, Drake interrupted. Specialist Torin, full analysis of those satellites. I want to know everything: age composition, power source, broadcast method. Everything. Jax's four hands moved across multiple consoles simultaneously, each appendage working independently while his mind processed the incoming data streams. The beacons are old, sir, very old. Composition dating suggests they've been broadcasting for at least 2,000 years, possibly longer. But they're still functional, still powered by something our sensors can't fully identify. Someone has been maintaining them. Or something, Valen added quietly. Drake studied the satellites on the view screen. Each one was roughly spherical, perhaps 10 meters in diameter, covered in those strange shifting markings that his eyes couldn't quite focus on. Ancient, alien, warning. Dr. Oryx, what can you tell me about the word Terran? Kalen consulted the linguistic database tentacles dancing across multiple input devices. Searching, Admiral Terran appears to be derived from an ancient human word, Terra. In their primitive pre-spaceflight language, it meant Earth, their homeworld. Humans. Drake's voice was flat, emotionless, but inside something cold was forming. But humans went extinct 3 centuries ago. According to our records, yes. They achieved faster-than-light travel approximately 800 years ago, expanded rapidly for about 200 years. Then they destroyed themselves in a civil war. Their homeworld was obliterated in the conflict. No survivors documented in any Imperial records. Then why, Valen asked slowly, are there satellites broadcasting in human language, warning us away from a quarantine zone, using a treaty number that doesn't exist in any database? No one had an answer. The beacon message continued its endless loop. Turn back, turn back, turn back. Drake looked at the tactical display. Beyond the beacon perimeter, the refugee transport signal pulsed weakly, growing fainter with each passing second. 127 children. Life support failing. Minutes, not hours. He thought of his son, of holding that small hand one last time, of promises made and broken by circumstance and distance, of 15 years of regret and what-ifs. Not this time. Take us through, he said. Sir, I gave an order, Commander. Those children don't have time for us to request authorization or debate regulations. We're going in. The bridge fell into that particular silence that came when crew members knew their commanding officer was right, but also knew they were about to violate every protocol in the book. Valen's fingers moved across her console. Her voice was steady, professional. All ships, follow the flagship, maintain formation. Prepare for unknown conditions on the other side of the perimeter. The four Imperial vessels accelerated toward the ancient barrier. As they crossed the boundary marked by those 73 satellites, every officer on every bridge held their breath. For a moment, nothing happened. Then simultaneously, as if controlled by a single consciousness aware of their transgression, the satellites went silent. Every single one. 73 ancient warnings that had broadcast continuously for 2 millennia, all shutting down at exactly the same instant. Sir, Jack said, his voice tight with tension. That's not automatic shutdown. That's not pre-programmed response. Something just manually turned them off. Something is actively watching us right now. Something knows we're here, Kalen whispered, tentacles coiling tighter. Drake ignored the chill running down his spine. Continued to the transport, maximum speed. All ships stay alert, weapons ready, but do not lock on to anything unless I give explicit orders. They found the Horizon's Promise, drifting in the shadow of a dead moon 37 minutes later. The ship looked like a ghost, hull scored with weapons damage from the pirate attack, engines cold and dark. No lights except the faint emergency beacons that would continue broadcasting until the ship's power cells finally died. It looked like a tomb. Life signs, Drake demanded. Jax's hands flew across his sensors, reading 127, all children, all still alive, but barely. Life support is down to 8%. They have maybe 15 minutes of breathable air left. Temperature inside the ship is 3 degrees above freezing. 15 minutes. They'd made it with minutes to spare. Commander Valen, prepare boarding parties, medical teams to the transporters. I want every child off that ship in 10 minutes. Have the medical bays standing by with thermal treatment and emergency care. Aye, sir, Drake stood. I'm going with the boarding parties. Admiral regulations state that the commanding officer should remain on the bridge during rescue operations in hostile territory. Drake was already moving toward the transporter room. I know what regulations state, Commander. You have the bridge. Get those children to safety. I'll be back shortly. Back. The interior of the Promise was a tomb of ice and silence. Drake's breath fogged in the freezing air as the boarding party materialized in the ship's main corridor. Emergency lights painted everything in shades of red that reminded him too much of blood. The temperature reading on his suit display showed -2°C, cold enough to kill within hours. The children had been in this for how long? He led the first team 8 Marines in full armor, 2 medics with emergency medical equipment, all moving quickly but carefully through the darkened corridors. Their footsteps echoed in the silence. The door to the cargo bay was jammed, frozen shut by the extreme cold. The Marines used a cutting torch, the bright orange flame looking obscene in the red-lit darkness. It took 3 minutes to cut through, 3 minutes that felt like hours. Inside, 127 children huddled together in the center of the bay. They'd organized themselves instinctively. The older ones on the outside, wrapped in emergency blankets, forming a protective shell. The younger ones pressed together in the center, sharing body heat. Survival instinct and selflessness combined. Even now, even on the edge of death, they were trying to protect each other. But they were fading, lips blue, skin pale. Skin, shivering had stopped, for many of them a bad sign. The body's last defense against cold was shutting down. They didn't have minutes. They had seconds. The medics moved in immediately, distributing thermal wraps, checking vital signs with practiced efficiency, setting up portable life support units that pumped warm, oxygen-rich air into desperate lungs. And in the middle of them all, Drake saw her. A little girl with auburn hair and storm gray eyes, maybe 7 years old. She sat with 3 smaller children pressed against her, and even now, even with her lips blue and her small body shaking with cold, she was singing. The voice was barely a whisper, but it carried. Tomorrow bring us hope and light. So hush now, darling. Sleep tonight. Drake knelt beside her, and she looked up at him with eyes that held no fear. Just exhaustion. Just the kind of weariness that came from being strong for too long. Are you an angel? She asked. Her voice was hoarse from the cold. No, Drake said gently. He pulled off his own thermal cloak rated for extreme environments, far warmer than the emergency blankets, and wrapped it around her small frame. I'm just a soldier. What is your name? Lyra. Lyra Ashford. Well, Lyra Ashford, we're getting you out of here. You and all your friends. "The others first," she said, and the strength in that small voice nearly broke him. "The little ones. They're colder than me. They need help more." Drake felt something crack in his chest. He'd seen warriors 3 times her age with less courage, less selflessness. "We're taking everyone," he promised. "Can you walk?" she tried. Her legs gave out immediately. She'd been sitting in the same position for hours, keeping the smaller children warm, and her body had shut down everything but essential functions. Drake caught her before she hit the deck. Lifted her easily. She weighed almost nothing, and he could feel her bones through the thermal cloak. How long had it been since she'd eaten, since she'd felt safe? "I've got you," he said, and meant it as a promise to more than just this one child. Lyra rested her head against his chest. "Thank you," she whispered. "I knew someone would come. My mother said angels always come when you need them most." She was wrong about the angel part, but she was right about someone coming. The evacuation took 8 minutes. Every child accounted for. Every small life transferred to the medical bays on the 4 Imperial ships. Thermal treatments running, oxygen flowing, food being prepared, care being given by people who understood that they'd just saved something precious. Drake stood on his bridge 15 minutes later, watching the Promise drift away into the darkness. Empty now, a ghost ship in a forbidden zone, but the children it had carried were safe, warm, alive. "All children stable," the medical officer reported via comm. "No serious injuries, just exposure, dehydration, and minor trauma. They'll recover fully with proper care." "You got there just in time, Admiral." Relief washed through Drake like a physical wave. He gripped his command chair to keep his hands from shaking with the aftermath of adrenaline and tension. "Sir," Jax called out from his sensor station. His 4 hands were moving frantically across his console, and his voice carried an edge Drake had never heard before. "Sir, I'm detecting something. Multiple objects. Large, very large, and they're waking up." The view screen shifted to show what Jax's sensors had found. In the distance, orbiting what appeared to be a dead world, stripped of atmosphere and life, massive structures hung in space. Stations, shipyards, construction facilities of impossible scale. Each one easily 10 times the size of the largest Imperial space dock Drake had ever seen. And they were all dark, dormant, like sleeping giants that had slumbered for centuries. Until now. As Drake watched, lights began to flicker along the hull of the nearest structure. Not the random flicker of systems coming online. Deliberate, patterned, like a giant slowly opening its eyes after a long sleep. "How many?" Drake asked quietly. 16 in this system alone." Jax's voice was tight. "Sir, I'm detecting similar structures in the adjacent star systems. Hundreds of them, all covered in the same markings as the beacons, all starting to activate simultaneously." "What are they?" "Unknown, but Admiral," Jax paused. "The power signatures I'm reading, they're enormous. More power than our entire fleet generates. And they're all connected somehow. I'm detecting data transmissions between them. Quantum encrypted, impossible to intercept. It's like they're communicating. Human structures, human markings, all waking up because someone had crossed the boundary." Before Drake could respond, the largest structure, a space station that dwarfed everything else in the system, completed its activation sequence. The lights resolved into geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Mathematical perfection that the human or Kthrai or Ilarian eye wasn't designed to process. And at the center of the structure, a massive aperture began to open like a giant's eye, finally opening to regard the intruders. "Battle stations," Drake ordered. His voice was calm, professional, hiding the fear that tried to crawl up his throat. "All ships to defensive formation around the Promise. Raise shields. Weapons ready, but do not lock onto anything unless I give explicit orders." The structure's aperture opened fully, and from within a beam of light shot across the void. Not a weapon, not an attack, a scanning beam. It swept across Drake's fleet with methodical precision, reading every system, analyzing every weapon, cataloging every vulnerability. "They're scanning us," Valen reported unnecessarily. The scan completed. The beam retracted. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the view screen shifted without anyone touching the controls. An outside signal had taken control of their systems. Impossible. Imperial security protocol calls should have prevented that. But the protocols didn't even seem to notice the intrusion. A hologram appeared on the main view screen. Not a recording. A live transmission from somewhere inside that massive structure. A human woman, perhaps 60 years old. Gray hair cut short and practical. wearing a simple uniform unlike anything in Imperial records, no rank insignia, no decorations, just clean lines and functional design. Her eyes were kind, but carried the weight of years beyond counting, of decisions made and consequences accepted. When she spoke, her voice filled the bridge, calm, measured, impossibly sad. I am Warden Elena Thorne, Guardian of Sanctuary Station Alpha 7. You have violated the Terran quarantine zone. She paused, and in that pause, Drake heard centuries of isolation and preparation. Please state your purpose here. Drake stepped forward, acutely aware that he was addressing a being who should not exist. I am Admiral Theron Drake of the Galactic Empire. We entered this zone to rescue a refugee transport carrying 127 children. They were under attack by pirates, and their ship drifted through your boundary. The children are now safe aboard my vessels. Elena's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Children, of course. Another pause. Admiral Drake, how much do you know about what happened to humanity? According to Imperial records, your species went extinct 300 years ago. A civil war. Your home world was destroyed. No survivors were documented. No, Elena said quietly. Her hologram shifted and images appeared around her. Star charts, historical records, battle footage from centuries past. That's the story we wanted the galaxy to believe. That's the convenient fiction that let us disappear. The truth is far more complicated and far more dangerous. The hologram expanded. Images flickered past human ships engaged in combat alien worlds, surrendering treaties signed at gunpoint. 3 centuries ago, humanity stood at a crossroads. We had mastered faster-than-light travel only 200 years earlier, developed weapons that could crack planets, encountered 17 different alien civilizations in our expansion. And do you know what we did with those encounters? Admiral Drake remained silent, watching the historical footage play out. We conquered them, every single one, not through malice or hatred, through simple, brutal efficiency. We were too good at war, too adaptable, too willing to sacrifice anything, moral boundaries, ethical constraints, even our own humanity for victory. In 150 years of space travel, we built an empire that controlled 63 star systems. We were unstoppable. More images, human fleets overwhelming alien defenses with coordinated precision, worlds surrendering rather than face annihilation, species submitting to human rule because resistance meant extinction. And that, Elena said, her voice heavy with old pain and old wisdom, terrified us. Not our enemies, ourselves. We looked at what we were becoming and saw our future written in the ruins of the civilizations we'd crushed. We were becoming exactly what humanity had always feared: the unstoppable conqueror. The Galactic Empire built on corpses and submission. So you destroyed yourselves? Drake asked. No, we made a choice, the hardest choice in our history. The hologram shifted to show massive construction projects, thousands of ships being built, entire populations relocating to hidden bases scattered across forbidden space. We held a referendum. Every human in existence voted. Billions of voices. One question. Do we continue expanding, becoming the greatest empire the galaxy has ever seen? Or do we stop, retreat, remove ourselves from galactic civilization entirely, and let the other species develop without our shadow over them? Why would anyone choose exile? Valen breathed. Elena looked directly at her, and Drake saw genuine warmth in those ancient eyes. Because we studied history, Commander. Our history and that of every civilization we'd encountered. We saw a pattern. Empires built on conquest never end well. They consume everything until there's nothing left to conquer, then they turn on themselves. Rome, the Mongols, the British Empire, a dozen others from Earth's past. And we saw it happening in galactic history too. The Vorthon Dominion, the Zelkathi hegemony, great powers that rose and fell and left nothing but ruins. She gestured to the massive station surrounding her. So we chose exile, voluntary quarantine. We took everything, our technology, our people, our entire civilization, and we disappeared. We faked our own extinction. Scattered records suggesting civil war and mutual destruction. Made it easy for the galaxy to forget we ever existed. Easier that way. Less chance someone would come looking for us if they thought there was nothing left to find. But the beacons, Drake said, the warnings, the treaty designation, why maintain them if you wanted to be forgotten? Elena's expression became even sadder. Because forgetting is one thing, Admiral. Violating our self-imposed quarantine is another. We built those beacons to protect the galaxy. Not from external threats, from us. From what we might become if we ever left our exile. from the weapons we've developed, the capabilities we've perfected, the terrible, awesome power we've accumulated in 300 years of focused preparation. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. "You're afraid of yourselves," Kalen said softly, tentacles coiling with the realization. "We were afraid of what we were becoming," Elena corrected. "Admiral Drake, in the 300 years since we entered exile, we have dedicated ourselves to a single purpose, ensuring that humanity never again becomes a threat to galactic peace. That if we're ever forced to interact with the galaxy, we do so from a position of such overwhelming strength that violence becomes unnecessary. Peace through superior firepower, as the old saying goes. But with one critical difference, we actually mean the peace part. By building weapons," Drake challenged, "by building everything." The view screen shifted again. More structures coming online across multiple star systems, shipyards activating and hollowed out asteroids, manufacturing facilities emerging from the dead cores of airless worlds, weapon platforms disguised as natural phenomena, thousands of vessels, each one incorporating technology that made Imperial designs look like primitive steam engines. We spent 3 centuries perfecting not just warfare, but every aspect of civilization. Medicine, engineering, physics, philosophy. We had no wars to distract us, no internal conflicts, no external threats. Just pure, focused development driven by the knowledge that someday someone would find us, would threaten our exile. And when that day came, we needed to be ready. Drake felt ice forming in his chest. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, Admiral, that your rescue mission, noble and brave as it was, has created a problem neither of us wanted. You've seen us. You know we exist. Your instruments have recorded our structures, our technology, our capabilities. And you've reported this to your superiors." It wasn't a question. Elena knew. "Haven't you?" Drake's silence was answer enough. Elena nodded slowly as if confirming something she'd already known. "Then you've doomed us both, because your Emperor will not ignore this discovery. He'll see an unknown civilization, advanced technology, a potential threat to Imperial dominance, and he'll do what emperors have done since the dawn of civilization. He'll send a fleet," Valen whispered. "Not just a fleet," Elena said. "He'll send everything, an overwhelming show of force designed to intimidate us into submission or annihilate us if we resist. And when he does, we'll be faced with an impossible choice. Surrender our exile and rejoin a galaxy we left behind for very good reasons. Or defend ourselves." Her hologram leaned forward, and for the first time Drake saw something beyond sadness in her eyes. Something that made his warrior instincts, honed over 3 decades of combat, scream danger. Absolute certainty. "Admiral Drake, I need you to understand something fundamental about who we are and what we've become. We don't want to fight you. We don't want to fight anyone. We gave up conquest and dominance 300 years ago precisely because we were too good at it. But if your empire forces our hand, if your emperor gives us no choice but to defend our exile." The hologram expanded one final time. Battle simulations, tactical analyses, scenarios running at impossible speed, all of them showing the same result with mathematical precision. Imperial defeat. Complete. Absolute. Undeniable. "We will protect what we've built here," Elena said quietly, "whatever the cost, not because we want to prove our strength, but because the alternative humanity unleashed on an unprepared galaxy is too terrible to contemplate. We chose exile to save the galaxy from us. We will defend that choice with everything we've created in our isolation." The transmission ended, leaving Drake standing on his bridge surrounded by his crew, staring at the massive structure that had been dark minutes ago and now blazed with power like a star being born. "Admiral," Valen said carefully. Her voice was steady, but Drake could hear the edge of concern beneath the professionalism. "What do we do?" Before Drake could answer, his communications console chimed. "Incoming transmission. Priority 1. Imperial Grand Fleet Command. The highest level of emergency communication reserved for imminent threats to the Empire itself." When the image resolved on a secondary screen, Drake recognized the face immediately. Grand Admiral Kara Voss, second only to the Emperor himself in the Imperial command structure. Vorthon species. 4 arms moving with unconscious efficiency even while sitting still. A tactical genius who'd planned the conquest of 6 star systems, completely without mercy when Imperial interests were at stake. "Admiral Drake." Her voice was flat, emotionless. The voice of someone delivering a predetermined message. "Your unauthorized entry into the Theta 7 sector has been noted. Your rescue of the refugee children has been logged and will be addressed appropriately. You will hold your current position. Grand Admiral, the children required immediate. I'm not questioning your rescue operation, Admiral. Voss's expression remained unreadable, her forearms crossed in a way that suggested both patience and warning. I'm informing you that Emperor Varanus has taken a personal interest in your discovery. He is assembling a battle fleet, 10,000 ships, the largest military force gathered since the Unification Wars. He will arrive in your sector in 18 hours. Drake's blood ran cold. 10,000 ships meant the Emperor wasn't interested in negotiation or careful first contact. He was coming to conquer or destroy. Grand Admiral, the situation is more complex than our initial reports suggested. These people are an unknown factor in Imperial space. Yes, I've reviewed your preliminary data. Voss leaned forward slightly. You will provide a full tactical briefing to the Emperor upon his arrival. Until then, maintain position and gather all possible intelligence on these humans and their capabilities. The Emperor is particularly interested in their technology and their continued existence. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Drake alone with a choice he'd hoped never to face. He turned to look at the view screen. At Sanctuary Station Alpha 7, blazing with light in the darkness. At the hundreds of other structures coming online across multiple star systems. At a civilization that had spent 3 centuries preparing for exactly this moment. And in the medical bay one deck below, he thought of Lara Ashford, 7 years old, singing lullabies to keep other children calm while the world fell apart around her. Safe now, warm now, alive now. But for how long if 2 civilizations went to war? Sir, Valen asked quietly. Your orders. Theron Drake had spent 47 years in Imperial service. He had followed orders without question, upheld regulations even when they seemed arbitrary, done his duty through battles that cost thousands of lives. He'd built a career on loyalty and discipline. But standing there watching 2 civilizations slide toward inevitable conflict, he realized that sometimes duty wasn't enough. Sometimes following orders meant watching everything good burn. Sometimes you had to choose what was right over what was easy. Open a channel to Sanctuary Station, he said. I need to speak with Warden Thorne again, privately. Sir, the Emperor is coming, and someone needs to tell these people exactly what they're facing, because if they're not prepared, he trailed off. If they're not prepared, he thought a lot of people are going to die, starting with 127 children who had already lost everything once. He wouldn't let them lose everything again. The channel opened. Elena Thorne's face appeared on a private screen, visible only to Drake. She looked older now, more tired, like someone who'd seen this moment coming for 300 years and had spent every day of those years dreading its arrival. Admiral Drake, she said, I assume your Emperor is coming. 10,000 ships, 18 hours. Grand Admiral Voss herself is coordinating the fleet movement. This isn't a diplomatic mission, this is an invasion force. Elena nodded slowly without surprise or panic, just acceptance. Then we have work to do. And Admiral, thank you for saving the children, for trying to warn us. Whatever happens next, whatever choices we're all forced to make, know that we are grateful for your courage, for your compassion, for being better than the system you serve. The children aren't safe yet, Drake said quietly. Not while they're trapped between 2 fleets preparing for war. Warden Thorne, I need you to trust me, and I need to trust you, because the alternative, the one where we fight and die and accomplish nothing but mutual destruction, that alternative helps no one. Elena studied him for a long moment. Her ancient eyes seemed to look through him, weighing and measuring something beyond just his words. Finally, slowly, she smiled. It was a sad smile, but it carried something Drake desperately needed to see. Hope. Very well, Admiral Theron Drake, let's talk. We have 18 hours to find a way to prevent catastrophe. Let's not waste a single second of them. The screen split, human and imperial, exile and empire. 2 civilizations that should never have met, trying desperately to find a way forward that didn't end in bloodshed. And somewhere in the medical bay of the Dominion, Lyra Ashford slept peacefully for the first time in months, wrapped in warm blankets, surrounded by people who cared, dreaming of her mother's lullaby and the Admiral who'd kept his promise, unaware that her rescue had set in motion events that would reshape the galaxy, that her small life saved by one man's choice to do the right thing, despite the rules, had become the fulcrum on which the future of 2 civilizations now balanced. The beacons remained silent. The structures continued waking. And somewhere between the stars, the clock counted down, 18 hours. 18 hours to change the course of history. Or 18 hours until everything humanity had built in 300 years of exile was tested in fire and blood? The answer would come with the dawn. The children slept in beds that had been empty for 3 centuries. Sanctuary Station Alpha 7's medical wing had been designed during the Great Exodus, prepared for casualties that never came. The careful, methodical retreat humanity had orchestrated meant no injuries, no emergencies, no desperate need for the hundreds of medical beds installed in gleaming rows. For 300 years they had waited, pristine, ready, unused, until now. Admiral Theron Drake stood in the observation corridor, watching through transparent aluminum as human medical staff moved among 127 sleeping forms, each child wrapped in thermal blankets, each one breathing steadily, each one alive against impossible odds. Lyra Ashford occupied the bed nearest the observation window. Even in sleep, her small hand remained extended toward the younger children in adjacent beds, still protecting them, still being strong for others, even when strength should no longer be required. Her auburn hair spread across the pillow like a corona, and in the soft medical lighting, she looked impossibly young, impossibly fragile. Drake placed his hand against the observation window. The material was cool beneath his scaled palm. A voice spoke behind him. "They're more resilient than they have any right to be." Drake turned to find an elderly human approaching down the corridor. 70 years old, perhaps older, hard to tell with humans, especially ones who'd lived in the controlled environments of deep space habitation. White hair swept back from a weathered face, eyes the color of winter skies, sharp and assessing despite their kindness. He moved with the careful dignity of someone whose body had accumulated decades, but whose mind remained sharp as surgical steel. The man wore a simple gray uniform, no rank insignia, no weapons, no decorations or medals, just a small pin on his collar, a silver dove carrying an olive branch, an ancient earth symbol that Drake vaguely recognized from xenocultural studies. "Ambassador Aldrich Winters," the man said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Forgive me for not meeting you sooner. I've been coordinating the evacuation of our outer sensor platforms. We have 18 hours before your Emperor arrives, and I wanted to ensure we presented the right impression." Drake shook the offered hand. The grip was firm, stronger than expected. What impression would that be? Capability without aggression, strength without arrogance. The capacity for violence paired with the wisdom to avoid it. Winters smiled, and the expression carried layers of meaning. "A difficult balance, Admiral. We've had 3 centuries to practice. Still not entirely certain we've mastered it." They stood together in silence for a moment, watching the children sleep. Drake noticed how Winter's gaze lingered on Lyra, something sad and thoughtful in his ancient eyes. "How are they really?" Drake asked. "Beyond the medical reports. Physically, they'll recover completely. Exposure, dehydration, mild trauma from the attack, all treatable. We have excellent medical technology, benefits of having nothing but time to perfect such things." Winters paused. "Emotionally, that's harder. They've lost everything. Homes, families, their entire world literally burned out of existence. We can heal their bodies. Their spirits will take considerably longer." "They're strong," Drake said, thinking of Lyra's voice in the darkness. The lullaby that had kept hope alive when hope should have died. Children often are. Stronger than we give them credit for. Stronger than many adults in similar circumstances. Winters gestured down the corridor. "Walk with me, Admiral. We need to talk. And I'd prefer to do it somewhere your crew's communication systems can't monitor our conversation." Drake followed him through corridors that seemed alive. The architecture was organic in ways that Imperial design never achieved: curves instead of rigid angles, flowing spaces instead of compartmentalized boxes, materials that seemed to breathe and adjust to the presence of living beings. It felt less like a space station and more like home, comfortable, welcoming, human in ways that transcended species. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Winters said, noticing his attention. "We had time, years to refine, decades to perfect, generations to iterate on design principles. We didn't need to build quickly or efficiently. We could build thoughtfully. Every corridor designed to reduce psychological stress. Every space optimized for human well-being. After 300 years, we became very good at creating environments where people could actually live instead of merely surviving." They entered a chamber that stopped Drake in his tracks. A garden. Somehow impossibly, there was a garden inside the space station. Real trees reaching toward a ceiling that showed a holographic sky. Earth's sky, Drake realized. Blue with scattered clouds and a sun that looked subtly different from the stars he knew. Real grass beneath his feet. a small pond with actual fish darting through clear water. The air smelled of growing things of life of home. We saved seeds, Winters explained, leading him to a bench beside the pond, from the homeworld before we left. Before we faked our extinction and scattered to hidden bases across 50 star systems, this garden contains botanical specimens from every continent on Earth. Oak trees from North America, bamboo from Asia, baobabs from Africa. A reminder of what we were protecting when we chose exile over empire. Drake settled onto the bench. The material adjusted to his weight and body shape, somehow managing to be comfortable for Cathra-physiology despite being designed for humans. Warden Thorne said you've been preparing. For 300 years. Preparing for what exactly? Winters sat beside him, and for a moment the old man simply watched the fish swimming in their endless circles. For this moment. For the day someone would stumble through our quarantine, either by accident or by intention, and force us to reveal ourselves. We always knew it would happen eventually. Our probability calculations gave us a 73% chance within 500 years. You beat the odds by 2 centuries, Admiral. You're saying you've been planning for my arrival. Not yours specifically, but someone like you. An Imperial officer. Honorable but bound by duty. Compassionate but constrained by regulations. Caught between following orders and doing what's right. Winters looked at him directly. We've studied your empire extensively. Your history, your culture, your military doctrine, your political structures. We know how your emperor thinks, how your admirals think, how your entire civilization operates. We know what's coming because we've watched it happen dozens of times before to other species who encounter the empire. Drake felt that ice forming in his chest again. What do you know? Everything. Winter's voice remained quiet, gentle, certain. We've been inside your information networks for 83 years, Admiral. Not to sabotage, not to steal military secrets for conquest, to understand, to learn, to prepare. To ensure that when this moment inevitably came, we could respond appropriately without needing to destroy anyone. You've been spying on the Empire for 8 decades. We've been studying you. There's a meaningful difference. Winters stood moved to a small control panel disguised among flowering plants. He pressed several buttons with the practiced ease of long familiarity. The holographic sky vanished. In its place, images appeared. Imperial battle fleets in formation. Tactical manuals with classification stamps. Communication protocols. Ship designs with precise specifications. Weapons development programs. Command structures showing every level from Emperor to enlisted. Information that should have been impossible for outsiders to access. Drake recognized documents he'd read himself. Classified materials. Top secret strategic plans. How is this possible? Winters turned to face him, and in the old ambassador's eyes, Drake saw not triumph or mockery, but something closer to regret. Admiral, where do you think your computer systems came from? They were developed by Imperial engineers over thousands of years of over 3,000 years of iteration and improvement. Yes, but developed based on what foundation? What core architecture? What fundamental programming language? Drake said nothing. He'd never thought about it. Computer systems simply existed. They'd always been part of Imperial infrastructure. Human design, Winters said quietly, from 800 years ago, before our civil war, before our exile, before we disappeared from galactic history. We invented faster-than-light communication protocols, quantum computing architectures, neural interface standards. We developed the foundational technologies that every spacefaring civilization in this galaxy now uses. When we left, we didn't take those secrets with us into exile. We let the galaxy keep them, build on them, improve them, create something wonderful from what we'd begun. He gestured to the images surrounding them. But we kept something else. The back doors, the hidden access pathways, the emergency override protocols built into the very foundation of the systems. Not because we wanted control over the galaxy, but because we needed understanding. We needed to know if galactic civilization was trending toward peace or war, cooperation or conquest. And more importantly, we needed to ensure that if war ever came to us, if our exile was ever threatened, we could defend ourselves without becoming the monsters we'd fled from. Drake stood slowly. His hand moved unconsciously toward his sidearm, even though he knew it would accomplish nothing. Knew that this was a revelation, not a threat. Winters noticed, smiled sadly. You can't shoot me, Admiral. I'm a hologram. The real me is in a shielded command center 300 kilometers below this station's surface coordinating our defensive preparations. But I appreciate the instinct. It speaks to your training and your discipline. Drake's hand fell. This is an act of war. Infiltration on this scale is an act of survival, Winters interrupted gently. Not war. There's a critical difference that I hope you'll come to understand. He touched the control panel again. The images shifted, showing something new. Shipyards, hidden inside hollowed asteroids invisible to casual scans. Manufacturing facilities built into the dead cores of airless worlds powered by fusion reactors deep beneath the surface. Weapon platforms disguised as natural space debris indistinguishable from the cosmic flotsam that drifted through every star system. Fleet after fleet of vessels, each one incorporating technology that made Imperial designs look primitive. We didn't spend 3 centuries hiding in fear, Admiral. We spent 3 centuries preparing with purpose. Every human in the sanctuary contributed. Engineers designed better ships. Scientists pushed the boundaries of physics. Soldiers studied warfare from every angle. Philosophers debated the ethics of defense versus offense. We built an entire civilization with a single shared purpose, ensuring that humanity would never again threaten galactic peace, while simultaneously ensuring we could protect ourselves if that peace was threatened by others. By building enough weapons to destroy the galaxy, Drake's voice was hard. By building enough capability to defend ourselves without destroying anyone else. The images shifted again, and now Drake saw something that made his warrior's heart stumble. Tactical simulations. Battle scenarios. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Each one showing human forces engaging Imperial fleets in different configurations, different strategies, different approaches. Every single simulation ended the same way. Imperial ships disabled. Not destroyed, not vaporized or torn apart or reduced to expanding clouds of debris. Disabled. Weapons offline. Engines dead. Shields collapsed. Crews alive but helpless. Ships captured or released depending on the scenario. 0 casualties. We perfected something that no other civilization in galactic history has achieved, Winters said softly. The art of fighting without killing. Every weapon we've designed has non-lethal modes as the primary configuration. Every tactic we've developed prioritizes disablement over destruction. Every strategy focuses on making violence unnecessary rather than making it efficient. We can win battles without bloodshed. That's what 3 centuries of focused preparation gives you, the ability to be strong enough to protect yourself without needing to kill your enemies to prove it. Drake stared at the simulations. The Emperor won't care about your intentions. He'll see you as a threat to Imperial dominance. We know. Winters turned off the displays. The holographic sky returned peaceful blue, scattered clouds, that strange sun, innocent, deceptive. That's why I'm talking to you, Admiral Drake. You saved those children. Not because regulations told you to. Not because it advanced your career or earned you commendations. You broke every protocol and violated forbidden space because it was the right thing to do. That tells me something fundamental about who you are as a person. What does it tell you? That you're the kind of man who might help us find a third option. Not surrender, not war. Something else, something better. Winters stepped closer, and despite the age difference, despite the species difference, Drake felt a connection. Understanding between 2 people who'd both made hard choices. We need time, Admiral. Time to negotiate with your Emperor. Time to demonstrate that we're not the threat he'll assume we are. Time to show him that peace isn't just possible, but preferable. For everyone involved. The Emperor is already on his way with 10,000 ships. He's not coming to negotiate. Then we need you to convince him to treat on. Winter's expression became grave. I know what I'm asking. I know the risks you'd be taking. If you help us, you'll be going against direct orders. Undermining Imperial authority, possibly committing treason in the eyes of your superiors. But Admiral, if you don't help us, a lot of people are going to die. And those children sleeping in our medical bay. They'll be right in the middle of the killing zone when 2 fleets start shooting at each other. Drake thought of Lyra, her small hand pressed against his chest as he carried her to safety. Her whispered thank you before exhaustion finally claimed her. He thought of his son, dead 15 years. The boy he couldn't save no matter how fast he'd pushed his ships through hyperspace. What do you need from me? He asked quietly. Relief flooded Winter's weathered face. Buy us time. When the Emperor arrives, don't engage. Don't fire first. Don't give him an excuse to claim we're the aggressors. Give me a chance to speak with him. To explain. To offer alternatives to violence. He won't listen. Maybe not, but I have to try. We all have to try. Winters touched the control panel one final time. A new image appeared, a memorial. Thousands of names carved in black stone, each one representing a life that had ended during the long years of exile. These are the humans who died in the first 50 years after we left the galaxy behind. Colonists lost to equipment failures before we perfected our life support systems. Scientists killed in experimental accidents as we pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Soldiers who fell, defending our borders from the pirates and raiders who saw our isolated settlements as easy targets. Every single one of them chose exile over conquest, chose peace over power, chose to build something better rather than something bigger. If we start killing now, if we abandon the principles they died protecting, their sacrifice means nothing. Drake understood. It was the same reason he'd buried his wife and son with full military honors, even though they'd been civilians. Some deaths meant something. Some sacrifices demanded that those who survived live up to the ideals the dead had embodied. "I'll do what I can," he said, but the Emperor is proud, arrogant, convinced of imperial superiority. Convincing him to negotiate instead of conquer is nearly impossible. "I know." Winters smiled grimly. "We've studied him extensively. Emperor Varanus, draconian species, over 1,000 years old, hasn't lost a major military engagement in all those centuries. Rules through a combination of overwhelming strength and carefully cultivated fear. He won't negotiate unless he's forced to recognize that violence would cost him more than diplomacy." "Then what's your plan?" "To force that recognition." Winter's expression hardened in a way that reminded Drake the old ambassador had probably seen more warfare than most soldiers ever would. "Admiral, we're going to give your emperor a demonstration. Not a threat, not a show of aggression. A very clear, very specific warning that fighting us would be the worst strategic mistake of his extremely long life." 16 hours later, the Imperial battle fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Theta 7 sector like an avalanche of metal and destruction. 10,000 ships, the largest assembled military force in 3 centuries of Imperial history. Every class of vessel represented: dreadnoughts whose main guns could reduce continents to molten slag, carriers launching fighter wings that blotted out the stars, heavy cruisers with enough firepower to crack planetary shields, destroyers and frigates and support vessels creating a wall of military might that stretched across 1,000,000 kilometers of space. At the center of this overwhelming display of power, the Imperial flagship, the Absolute Dominion, 3 kilometers of armored hull, weapons arrays that could sterilize entire worlds, shields that had never been breached in 1,000 years of combat. And on its bridge, commanding from the throne he'd occupied for longer than most civilizations existed, Emperor Varanus himself. Drake stood in the secondary command center of his own ship, watching the arrival on tactical displays that suddenly made his 4 vessels look like children's toys next to warships. The Dominion and her escort ships he'd thought powerful just days ago were now barely visible, dots against the massive fleet assembly. "Incoming transmission," Commander Valen reported from the primary bridge. Her voice carried across the command link. "It's the Emperor. Priority Alpha. He wants you on his bridge immediately, sir." Drake nodded to himself. He'd expected this summons, dreaded it. "Commander, you have the Dominion. If something happens to me, nothing will happen to you, sir." Valen's voice was firm. "If something happens," Drake continued, overriding her optimism with realism, "you are to protect those children, whatever it takes. Use your discretion. Break whatever orders you need to break. Just keep them safe. Understand?" There was a pause. Then Valen's voice came back softer, understanding what he was really saying. "Understood, Admiral. We'll keep them safe." The transporter beam took him directly to the Absolute Dominion's bridge. When the disorientation of molecular disassembly and reassembly faded, Drake found himself facing Emperor Varanus for the first time in his military career. The Emperor was magnificent in a way that transcended mere physical presence. Draconian species, scales the color of polished obsidian edged with silver that caught the bridge lighting like knife edges. 8 feet tall, ancient beyond easy comprehension. Eyes that burned with yellow fire, not metaphorically but literally. Bioluminescent organs that marked him as apex predator, even among a species bred for warfare. He wore armor that looked ceremonial. Elaborate engravings, precious metals worked into the chestplate, a cape of some material that seemed to absorb light. But Drake knew it was fully functional. Probably capable of withstanding a direct hit from a plasma cannon. Probably integrated with enough defensive systems to make the Emperor himself a walking weapons platform. "Admiral Drake," the Emperor's voice rumbled like distant thunder processed through a subwoofer. Deep, powerful, commanding. Your report stated that you discovered an extinct species, alive, hidden for 3 centuries. Show me. Yes, Your Majesty. Drake activated his personal data pad, transmitted the recordings he'd made over the past 18 hours. Sanctuary station coming online. The human fleets emerging from concealment. Warden Thorne's explanations. Ambassador Winter's revelations. The tactical simulations showing human capabilities. Vorenus watched in silence. When the recordings ended, he laughed. The sound was like breaking stone, like tectonic plates grinding together. Not amusement, contempt. They think themselves clever, hiding in the dark for 3 centuries, playing with salvaged technology, building stations and weapons from materials they scavenged from their own ruins. He turned to address his assembled admirals, 30 of the Empire's finest military minds, each one commanding thousands of ships, each one having conquered star systems in the Emperor's name. What do you see, my friends? Grand Admiral Kara Voss spoke first. Four-armed Vorthan, tactical genius, ruthless efficiency personified. I see a civilization in decline, Your Majesty. Impressive infrastructure from their golden age, yes. Evidence of past technological achievement, but no recent expansion, no new conquests, no growth. They've been static for 300 years, stagnant, dying slowly in their self-imposed isolation. Other admirals murmured agreement. Drake heard words like atrophied and obsolete, and primitive revival. Exactly, Vorenus said, and the satisfaction in his voice made Drake's stomach turn. They ran away, hid like frightened children, and now they want us to believe they're dangerous. He turned back to Drake. Admiral, you were intimidated by their warnings, concerned by their technology, impressed by their preparation. But you're thinking like an explorer, not a conqueror. You see mystery where I see opportunity. You see threat where I see weakness. A species that gave up its destiny to hide in the shadows isn't dangerous. It's pathetic. Your Majesty, they've had 3 centuries to prepare specifically to decay, Vorenus interrupted, and there was iron in his voice now. Command that had bent star systems to his will. 3 centuries of isolation. No challenges to keep them sharp. No warfare to drive innovation. No competition to force adaptation. They've grown soft, Admiral, weak, complacent. Whatever they once were when they abandoned their empire, they're not that anymore. They're ghosts pretending relevance. Drake felt his carefully constructed arguments dying before he could voice them. The Emperor had already decided, made up his mind before even arriving. Nothing Drake said would change that fundamental certainty. Sir Sam, he tried again knowing it was futile. They've requested an opportunity for diplomatic contact, to explain their position, to negotiate some form of, I don't negotiate with ghosts pretending to be threats. Vorenus moved to the main view screen. Beyond space remained empty. The human structures still distant, dark, waiting. Prepare the fleet for full assault. We'll sweep through their defenses like wind through paper. Claim their technology for the Empire. Bring these hiding humans back into the light, under Imperial rule, where they belong, where all advanced species eventually belong. Your Majesty, I strongly advise against. You advise nothing, Admiral. The Emperor's voice carried finality. Dismissal. You rescued children from a drifting transport. Admirable work. Commendable compassion. Your part in this operation is done. Return to your ship. Stay out of the way. Let professional conquerors do their work. Drake felt rage building in his chest. Hot. Overwhelming. The rage of a man who tried to do the right thing only to watch pride and arrogance destroy any chance of peaceful resolution. But what could he do? He was one admiral commanding 4 ships. Vorenus commanded 10,000 and the full weight of imperial authority and 1,000 years of unbroken victory. He was drawing breath to respond anyway, to make one final plea when every screen on the bridge flickered. Every single screen, tactical displays showing fleet positions, communication consoles managing thousands of data streams, navigation systems plotting attack vectors, the massive main view screen dominating the forward bulkhead, environmental controls, security monitors, even the Emperor's personal status displays. All of them shifted simultaneously to show the same thing. The bridge they were standing on, from dozens of different angles. Internal security cameras that shouldn't have been accessible to external signals. All of them now broadcasting on every display throughout the ship, showing the Emperor and his admirals from perspectives that should have been impossible. What? Vorenus began. Then the image shifted. Split screen. One half still showed the Imperial bridge in real time. The other half showed Ambassador Aldrich Winters sitting in a simple chair against a plain background, hands folded calmly in his lap like a grandfather preparing to tell a difficult truth to children who wouldn't want to hear it. Your Imperial Majesty, Winters said. His voice emerged from every speaker on every ship in the fleet, simultaneously 10,000 vessels all carrying the same message. I apologize for the intrusion, but you weren't taking my communication requests. And we really do need to talk, urgently. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos, officers shouting, security teams trying to cut the connection, communications specialists working frantically to regain control of systems that should have been impossible to compromise, tactical officers attempting to trace the signal source. Nothing worked. The intrusion continued unabated as if their best defensive systems were children's locks to someone with the proper keys. Winters continued speaking as if he had all the time in the universe. 300 years ago, humanity made a choice. We chose to leave, to remove ourselves from galactic politics, to let the rest of you grow and develop without our interference or domination. We hoped you'd use that time wisely, build something better than what we'd been building, create a galaxy based on cooperation rather than conquest. On the split screen, the security camera feeds shifted. Now they showed not just the bridge, but engineering sections, weapons bays with their massive armaments, shield generators humming with barely contained energy, reactor cores burning with barely controlled fusion. Every critical system on the flagship all displayed simultaneously with perfect clarity. We've been watching from our exile, Your Majesty, studying, learning, hoping, and I have to say, Winters shook his head with genuine sadness. You've disappointed us. The galaxy has made some progress, yes? Some species have learned cooperation, but the Empire, you've learned nothing. You've built the same system we fled from. Conquest, domination, submission through superior force. Vorenus found his voice, a roar that literally shook the bridge with its volume and fury. You dare! I dare! Winters interrupted calmly, and the fact that he could interrupt an emperor said everything about the power dynamic in this conversation, because I'm currently inside the computer systems of every ship in your fleet. Not just monitoring, controlling. If I wanted to, I could shut down your engines, disable your weapons, vent your atmosphere into space, trigger your self-destruct sequences. I could make your entire armada disappear as if it had never existed. 10,000 ships reduced to expanding clouds of particles in the time it takes you to draw breath. The bridge went absolutely silent. Even the Emperor stood frozen, comprehending for perhaps the first time in 1,000 years what it meant to be completely, utterly powerless. But I won't do that, Winters continued, and his voice carried genuine warmth now. Kindness, mercy, because unlike you, Your Majesty, we've evolved beyond the need to prove our strength through destruction. We've learned that true power isn't the ability to kill, it's the ability to choose not to kill even when you could. So instead of destroying you, let me show you something else, something that might help you understand what you're actually facing here. The displays shifted again. Now they showed everything. Schematics of every ship class in the Imperial fleet, design specifications down to individual circuit pathways, maintenance logs showing every repair, every upgrade, every modification, crew manifests listing every officer and enlisted personnel, battle plans for the current operation, strategic projections for future conquests, personal communications between admirals, private messages from the Emperor himself, everything, every secret, every classified document, every piece of intelligence that should have been encrypted beyond any possibility of external access, all of it displayed casually, effortlessly, as if the Empire's most sophisticated security systems were locks on a child's diary. We've been inside your networks for 83 years, Winters said. We know every ship you've built, every weapon you've developed, every tactic you've employed, every diplomatic negotiation you've conducted. We know your officers' names, their families, their fears, their ambitions. We know which admirals are secretly corrupt, which ones are genuinely brave, which ones would turn on you if given sufficient cause and proper motivation. He paused. Let that sink in. Let the Emperor process what it meant to have every secret laid bare. We know you, Emperor Vorenus. We know you better than you know yourself. We know your tactical preferences, your strategic blind spots, your personal weaknesses. We know everything there is to know about how you think, how you fight, how you rule. And that's why I'm asking you, begging you to reconsider this course of action. Vorenus' scales had darkened to near black. a sign of rage and draconian physiology. His bioluminescent eyes burned brighter. This is an act of war. No, Winters replied gently. This is a demonstration. If we wanted war, your fleet would already be disabled, your ships drifting, your crews wondering what happened to their mighty empire. This is me showing you that we could fight you, that we could win, but that we don't want to. There's a critical difference. Then what do you want? To be left alone, to continue our exile in peace, to live our lives without interference from empires that see every unknown as something to be conquered or destroyed. Winters leaned forward. We've built a good life here, Your Majesty. Peaceful, productive, meaningful. We're not a threat to you. We're not expanding, not conquering, not interfering in galactic affairs. We just want to be left in peace to maintain what we've created. And if I refuse, Winter's expression became infinitely sad, ancient eyes that had seen too much. Then we'll do what we've been preparing to do for 3 centuries. We'll defend ourselves, perfectly, completely, without hesitation or mercy. Not because we want to prove anything, not because we enjoy violence, but because you'll have forced our hand, because you'll have given us no choice but to demonstrate exactly what humanity became during our long isolation. The displays shifted one final time. Battle simulations. Thousands upon thousands of them. Each one showing different scenarios, different fleet compositions, different tactical approaches, different strategies and counter-strategies. Every single simulation ended the same way. Imperial defeat, not close battles, not hard-fought victories for the humans costing them dearly. Absolute, overwhelming, mathematically certain defeat. 10,000 ships reduced to helpless hulks floating in the void. Crews alive but humiliated. The might of the Empire rendered completely impotent. And the truly terrifying part, 0 human casualties in any simulation. These aren't propaganda. Your Majesty, Winters said quietly, these are predictive models based on 3 centuries of analysis. We know exactly how you'll attack because we've studied every battle you've ever fought. We know exactly how to counter your tactics because we've had 300 years to perfect our responses. And we will win. Not because we're better warriors than you, though we might be, but because we've had 3 centuries of peace to perfect the art of defensive warfare, while you've had 3 millennia of conquest making you complacent. Verena stared at the simulations. Drake could see the Emperor's mind working behind those burning eyes. Proud, arrogant, but not stupid. Capable of recognizing superior position when confronted with undeniable evidence. But would pride allow him to accept it? You expect me to believe this? Verenas finally asked. His voice was quieter now, more controlled, dangerous in its calmness. To accept that an extinct species has somehow become more advanced than the Empire. To surrender without even testing your claims. I expect you to be intelligent enough to realize that 3 centuries of focused preparation beats 3 millennia of complacent dominance. Winter's voice remained patient. Educational. Your Majesty, the Empire is old. Powerful, yes, but old. Your technologies haven't fundamentally changed in 1,000 years. You've refined them, improved them incrementally. But the core systems, the fundamental approach is unchanged. You've had no reason to innovate, no reason to improve dramatically, no real existential threats to push you forward. We had every reason to. You had comfort, Winters interrupted gently. Security, the absolute certainty that you were the strongest force in the galaxy. And that certainty made you lazy, made you stop pushing boundaries, made you satisfied with good enough. He paused. We, on the other hand, had fear. We had 3 centuries knowing that someday someone would find us, would threaten our exile, would force us to either surrender everything we'd built or defend it. So we prepared, constantly, obsessively, every generation building on the previous generation's work. No wars to distract us, no internal conflicts to drain resources. Just pure focused innovation driven by the knowledge that our survival, our ability to maintain the peace we'd chosen, depended entirely on being able to defend ourselves without becoming the conquerors we'd fled from. The throne room fell into heavy silence. Around the Emperor, his admirals stood frozen. Some looked angry, others thoughtful. A few looked genuinely frightened, and these were people who'd conquered star systems, who'd seen battles that cost millions of lives. Finally, Verena spoke. What are you proposing? A treaty. Simple, clear, mutually beneficial. Winter straightened in his chair. We stay in our territory. You stay in yours. We share nothing. We trade nothing. We simply coexist. Peacefully. With mutual respect for each other's sovereignty and mutual understanding that violating that sovereignty would be costly for everyone involved. And if I agree to this, then I'll withdraw from your systems. Delete the access pathways we've created. Leave you in peace to rule your empire however you see fit. You can return with a story about automated defenses too dangerous to challenge. File the whole incident in a classified archive. Forget we ever existed. Winters paused deliberately. And those children Admiral Drake rescued, they can continue to whatever destination they were heading toward, under Imperial escort, safe, protected, alive. Verena's eyes narrowed. You're using children as leverage. I'm reminding you what's at stake. Winters corrected. This isn't about territory or resources or pride or proving who's stronger. It's about whether two civilizations can share a galaxy without destroying each other. Those children represent the future. The question is, what kind of future do you want to give them? One built on peace and mutual respect, or one soaked in blood that accomplishes nothing but proving that violence breeds violence? The Emperor turned to Drake, those burning yellow eyes fixed on him with uncomfortable intensity. Your assessment, Admiral, you've spent time with these humans, spoken with them, observed their facilities. Do you believe they're serious? That they would actually attack if provoked? That they could succeed? Drake thought carefully before answering. He thought of Winters' sad eyes, Elena Thorne's quiet certainty, the memorial with thousands of names, the simulations showing zero casualty victories, the 300 years of preparation for a moment everyone hoped would never come. Yes, Your Majesty, I believe they would defend themselves, and I believe they would win. Verena's expression darkened, scales shifting to deeper black. You sound like you admire them, Admiral. I respect them, Drake corrected carefully. There's a meaningful difference. They made a choice 3 centuries ago, the hardest choice imaginable for any civilization. They gave up power, absolute galaxy-spanning power to preserve peace. They walked away from conquest when conquest would have been easy. How many civilizations in galactic history have done that? None, Grand Admiral Voss said quietly. She'd been studying the tactical simulations on her personal display, running her own analyses. None have ever willingly relinquished power once achieved. Every species we've encountered has either fought to expand or been conquered and absorbed. These humans are unprecedented, unique in galactic history. Vorenus growled, a low, dangerous sound that rumbled from deep in his chest. They're aberrations, cowards who ran away from their own success and now threaten us from their hiding place. They're unnatural, wrong. With respect, Your Majesty, Drake said carefully, knowing he was risking everything. They're not threatening us, they're defending themselves. There's a critical difference. Is there? Verenus turned back to the screens where Winters waited patiently. It seems to me that anyone capable of infiltrating Imperial systems so completely of compromising our most secure networks, of having unrestricted access to our most classified information, is inherently a threat, regardless of their stated intentions. Capability equals threat. Always has. Always will. Then let me put it another way, Winters interjected. Right now, at this precise moment, I could disable every ship in your fleet. I could leave you drifting in space helpless while we do whatever we want. Take your technology. Claim your territory. Reverse engineer your weapons. Study your biology. Strip your ships for parts. But I'm not doing any of that. I'm talking to you instead, asking for peace, offering cooperation. Doesn't that tell you something fundamental about our intentions, about who we are as a civilization? It tells me you're weak, Verna snarled, that despite all your preparation and technology and 3 centuries of focused development, you don't have the will to actually fight. You're still the cowards who ran away, still trying to hide, just with better technology this time. Winter's expression shifted. For the first time since the conversation began, Drake saw something other than sadness or patience in the old ambassador's eyes. He saw pity. Deep, genuine pity for someone who couldn't understand what was being offered. Your Majesty, Winter said softly, I've lived a long time. I've seen 2 world wars on Earth before we even reached the stars. I've studied every military conflict in human history and every war fought by every species in this galaxy. I understand warfare at a level you cannot imagine because I've made it my life's work to understand it so completely that I'd know exactly how to avoid it. And that understanding has taught me one critical fundamental truth about power and violence. He leaned forward, and despite being just a hologram on a screen, his presence seemed to fill the bridge. The strongest warriors are the ones who choose not to fight, The most powerful civilizations are the ones that can defend themselves without needing to prove it through conquest. True strength isn't the ability to destroy, it's the ability to show mercy when you could destroy. We learned that lesson at terrible cost. I hope you don't have to learn it the same way. Philosophy, Vorna spat. Children's wisdom, pretty words that mean nothing in the real world. The strong take what they want, the weak hide and hope to survive. That's reality. That's truth. Everything else is self-deception. Then I suppose we'll have to agree to disagree about fundamental reality. Winters stood from his chair. Your Majesty, I'm going to give you 18 hours. Time to think, time to consult with your advisors. Time to run your own tactical simulations and see if your results differ from ours. And at the end of those 18 hours, you'll give me your answer. Peace or war, coexistence or conflict. Choose wisely. And if I choose war, Winter's hologram began to fade, dissolving like mist in sunlight. But his voice remained, and the final words carried the weight of absolute certainty. Then you'll learn exactly why humanity chose exile 300 years ago. Not because we were afraid of others, but because we were afraid of ourselves. Of what we became when we stopped holding back. Of what we're capable of when we stopped choosing peace. You'll learn, Emperor Varanus, and I pray to whatever gods might listen, that you survive the lesson. The transmission ended. The screens returned to normal. Security systems came back online. Control returned to Imperial hands. But the message was clear. The humans had given the Empire a taste of their capabilities. A warning shot across the bow. A demonstration that mercy was being offered from a position of absolute strength, not desperate weakness. And now they were waiting to see if the Emperor was wise enough to accept peace, or foolish enough to start a war he couldn't win. Drake looked at Varanus, saw the Emperor's jaw working, scales shifting through color variations, bioluminescent eyes burning brighter with each passing second, rage and calculation warring for dominance in that ancient mind. Admirals, Varanus said finally. His voice was ice-given sound. Battle planning session, immediate. I want every scenario analyzed, every weakness identified, every possible attack vector explored. We will find a way to defeat these humans, and we will crush them for their arrogance. He turned to Drake. You're dismissed, Admiral. Return to your ship. Protect your rescued children. This no longer concerns you. Drake saluted, turned to leave. But as the transporter beam began taking him back to the Dominion, he caught Grand Admiral Voss's eye. She looked troubled, thoughtful, and perhaps, just perhaps, beginning to doubt. When Drake materialized back on his own bridge, Commander Valen was waiting. Sir, the Emperor has made his choice, Drake said quietly. He's going to attack. Despite everything, despite the demonstration, because of the demonstration, he sees it as a challenge, a threat to his authority, to imperial superiority, to everything he's built over 1,000 years of conquest. Drake moved to his command chair, sat heavily, felt the weight of what was coming pressing down on him. Contact Ambassador Winters. Tell him we tried. Tell him I'm sorry. In the medical bay, Lyra Ashford slept peacefully, unaware that the galaxy was about to tear itself apart around her. 18 hours until the deadline. 18 hours to change the Emperor's mind. Or 18 hours until everything humanity had built in 3 centuries of exile was tested in fire and fury. The storm was no longer gathering. It was here, and there was nowhere left to run. The 18 hours passed like a death watch. On Sanctuary Station Alpha 7, Warden Elena Thorne stood in the command nexus, a spherical chamber, buried 300 kilometers beneath the asteroid's surface, where every human settlement across 50 star systems were connected through quantum entanglement. Around her, holographic representations of the other wardens materialized like ghosts gathering for a funeral. 12 figures, 12 settlements, 12 voices that would decide humanity's response to what was coming. The Emperor has spent the last 16 hours running tactical simulations, reported Warden Marcus Liu from Sanctuary Delta 3. His image flickered slightly, quantum interference from the massive power buildup across all human installations. Our monitoring systems show he's analyzed 47 different attack scenarios. Results? Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. Every simulation projects Imperial victory. According to their calculations, they'll overwhelm us through sheer numerical superiority. Acceptable fleet losses of 30 to 40%, but total destruction of human defensive forces within 6 hours of engagement. Warden Amara Okoye from Sanctuary Gamma 9 spoke up, her voice carrying the accent of old Earth's African continent. Their simulations don't account for our actual capabilities. They're working from observed data only. They don't know about the quantum coordination network, the phase shift drives, the energy reclamation matrices. Exactly, Elena said quietly. Which means when the battle begins, if it begins, they'll be completely unprepared for what we can actually do. And when they realize the truth, asked Warden Isabella Rodriguez, youngest of the wardens at barely 60, when they understand that we can disable their entire fleet without firing a single lethal shot. Elena closed her eyes, felt the weight of 300 years of preparation settling on her shoulders like a physical burden. Then we hope Emperor Varanus is wise enough to recognize defeat when it's offered with mercy instead of mockery. And if he's not, the question hung in the quantum-linked silence, echoing across 50 star systems, touching the minds of every human in the sanctuary through their neural links. Finally, Elena opened her eyes, met the gaze of each holographic warden in turn. Then we show him exactly what humanity became during our exile. We demonstrate why we chose isolation over integration. We prove that our restraint wasn't weakness, but the hardest kind of strength. And we pray to whatever remnants of the divine might still listen to a species that abandoned the galaxy that he has the wisdom to surrender before we're forced to show our full capabilities. She gestured to the tactical display dominating the center of the chamber. Authorization vote. Do we engage if the Emperor attacks? Knowing that engagement means revealing everything we've hidden for 3 centuries. Knowing that the galaxy will finally understand what we truly are. 12 voices rose in the quantum network. 12 individuals maintaining their autonomy while thinking as one collective consciousness. 12 unanimous ayes. Then it's decided, Elena said softly. May the universe forgive us for what we're about to do, and may we forgive ourselves when it's over. Aboard the ISS Dominion, Admiral Theron Drake stood in the observation lounge watching the Imperial fleet maneuver into attack formations through reinforced viewports. 10,000 vessels moving with the coordinated precision of a predator preparing to strike. Beautiful in its terrible efficiency, overwhelming in its display of raw power. Commander Seraph Valen entered quietly, her footsteps barely audible on the deck plating. Admiral, the children are asking for you again. Drake turned from the viewport. Which ones? Most of them this time. But Lyra Ashford is leading the questions. She's been awake for 4 hours now. The medical staff thought, Valen paused, they thought you might be able to provide answers. They can't. Drake followed her through corridors that suddenly felt too narrow, too confining. In his mind, he kept seeing the tactical displays. 10,000 Imperial ships versus perhaps 3,000 human vessels. The numbers should have told a clear story, should have made victory certain. But numbers didn't account for 3 centuries of preparation, for technology that made Imperial weapons look primitive, for a species that had perfected warfare precisely so they'd never need to use it. The medical bay had transformed in the hours since the children's rescue. What had been a sterile treatment facility now looked almost home-like. Human medical staff had brought in comfort items, soft blankets in bright colors, toys from storage that had waited centuries for children to play with them, holographic displays showing peaceful Earth landscapes that no human had seen in 300 years. The children were gathered in the central common area. Most sat on cushions arranged in a circle. The youngest clung to the older ones. All of them looked at Drake with eyes that had seen too much, lost too much, survived too much. Lyra Ashford sat at the center of the circle, still wearing the medical gown they'd given her, but someone had found her a blanket that she draped around her shoulders like a cape. Her storm gray eyes tracked Drake as he entered, and he saw intelligence there, understanding beyond her years. You're the Admiral who saved us, she said. Not a question, a statement of fact. I am. Are we going to die now? The bluntness hit Drake like a physical blow. Around Lyra, the other children went silent, waiting, trusting him to lie to them with kindness, to tell them everything would be fine, to protect them from truth with comfortable fiction. He sat down on the deck instead, cross-legged, eye level, honest. I don't know, he said. There might be a battle, very soon. The humans protecting you right now, they don't want to fight. But my Emperor might not give them a choice. Will you fight too? A small voice from the back. A boy who couldn't have been more than 6. If I have to protect you, yes. Lyra studied him with those impossibly old eyes, her small fingers plucked at the blanket. My mother used to say that the bravest people aren't the ones who fight. They're the ones who find ways not to fight. She said violence is easy, peace is hard, and the strongest warriors are the ones who choose the hard path. Drake felt something crack in his chest, 15 years of scar tissue splitting open. Your mother was very wise. She's dead now. The bombs killed her when they destroyed our world. Lyra's voice was matter-of-fact, too young to have fully processed loss or old enough to have accepted what couldn't be changed. But I remember what she said, so I wanted to tell you, in case it helps you choose. Before Drake could respond, before he could find words adequate to the moment, alarms shrieked throughout the ship. All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, all hands to battle stations. Fleet engagement imminent. Drake stood, looked down at Lyra. Stay here. Stay safe. No matter what happens, these people will protect you. Admiral Drake, her voice stopped him at the door. Yes. Thank you for trying not to fight. He nodded, couldn't trust his voice, couldn't speak past the lump in his throat. Then he was running toward the bridge, and the children were behind him, and the war was beginning. The Imperial fleet advanced in perfect formation. 10,000 ships moving as one coordinated mass through the void. Dreadnoughts at the center, massive vessels whose main guns could reduce continents to ash. Carriers deploying fighter wings that swarmed like angry insects. Heavy cruisers forming the outer shell, their weapons erased, tracking targets that didn't yet exist. Destroyers screening the flanks, sensors sweeping for threats. Support vessels hanging back, ready to provide repair and resupply. It was the most powerful military force assembled in 3 centuries of galactic history, a display of strength designed to intimidate, to overwhelm, to make resistance seem futile. Against this avalanche of metal and firepower, 2,800 human vessels, outnumbered more than 3 to 1, outmassed, outgunned by any conventional metric. According to every tactical simulation the Empire had run, the battle should be over before it truly began. Human resistance would crumble. Their defensive formations would collapse. Their fleet would be scattered and destroyed within hours. Emperor Varenus stood on the bridge of the Absolute Dominion, watching the human fleet arrange itself in a defensive sphere around Sanctuary Station Alpha 7. His tactical display showed their positions with perfect clarity, analyzed their formations, calculated optimal attack vectors. Pathetic, he said, and his voice carried across the bridge like a pronouncement of doom. They've arranged themselves to protect their station. Admirable loyalty, futile strategy. Grand Admiral Voss stood beside him, but her expression wasn't triumphant. She'd been studying those tactical simulations Winters had shown them, running her own analyses, and something about the numbers troubled her. Your Majesty, the humans have made no aggressive moves. They're holding position, waiting. Waiting to die, Varenus corrected. His bioluminescent eyes burned brighter. All ships, advance to weapons range. Prepare to fire on my command. We'll show these cowards what happens when they threaten the Empire with demonstrations and infiltration. We'll teach them that strength without the will to use it is worthless. The order transmitted across 10,000 ships simultaneously. The Imperial Armada surged forward like a tidal wave of destruction, and the humans waited. On Sanctuary Station, Elena Thorne watched the Imperial advance through quantum-linked tactical displays that showed every ship, every weapon, every power signature in real time. Around her, the command nexus glowed with data streams as 12 wardens coordinated the defense of everything humanity had built in exile. Range in 30 seconds, reported Tactical Coordinator Hayes, his consciousness linked directly to the defensive network. All ships hold position, Elena ordered. Her voice transmitted instantly to every human vessel through their quantum network. Do not fire first. I repeat, do not fire first under any circumstances. Let them commit. Let them show the galaxy who the aggressors are. Warden, if we wait too long, we wait until they fire. We don't start this war, we only end it. Her voice was iron. We chose exile to avoid becoming conquerors. We won't abandon that principle now, just because it's hard. In 20 seconds, 10, 5. The first Imperial ship, a heavy cruiser designated INS Retribution, its captain eager for glory and promotion, crossed into weapons range. He didn't wait for fleet-wide coordination, didn't wait for the Emperor's explicit command. He fired. Energy beams lanced across the void at near light speed, striking the nearest human vessel, a sleek frigate, barely 1/3 the cruiser's mass. A ship that looked fragile, vulnerable, easy prey. The beams hit the frigate's hull and stopped, not deflected by shields, not absorbed into protective barriers. The energy simply stopped, suspended in space like frozen lightning, held, contained, analyzed at the molecular level. Then with casual precision that made it clear this was no desperate defense, but practiced technique, the frigate redirected the energy back at its source. The Retribution's shields failed instantly. Its weapon systems went offline. Its engines sputtered and died. Its life support maintained its hull intact, its crew alive and unharmed. But the ship itself, 300 meters of Imperial military might, had been reduced to a drifting hulk in less than 3 seconds. Across the Imperial fleet, 1,000 captains hesitated. Vorenus did not. All ships fire. 10,000 vessels opened fire simultaneously. The most concentrated barrage of energy weapons fire in recorded history. Enough destructive power to vaporize a moon. Enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Enough lethal force to sterilize an entire star system. All of it converging on 2,800 human ships arranged in that defensive sphere. The human fleet didn't move, didn't scatter, didn't attempt evasive maneuvers. They simply absorbed it. Every energy beam, every plasma bolt, every missile, every projectile, every form of destructive force the Empire could generate. All of it struck human vessels and disappeared into quantum suspension matrices that converted hostile energy into stored power. Then, with synchronized precision that made it absolutely clear this wasn't 2,800 separate ships, but rather one unified consciousness controlling 2,800 bodies, the humans responded. Not with weapons, not with destructive force, not with the overwhelming counterattack that would have been justified, with surgical precision. Targeting specific systems on specific ships. Engine disablers that left propulsion offline without destroying the drives themselves. Weapons neutralizers that locked firing mechanisms without triggering explosions. Shield disruptors that collapsed protective barriers without damaging the generators. Communication jammers that severed contact without destroying the arrays. In 90 seconds of perfectly coordinated response, 3,000 Imperial vessels went dark, drifting, helpless. Crews frantically trying to restore systems that had been rewritten at the quantum level. No explosions, no hull breaches, no casualties, no deaths. Just 3,000 warships rendered completely, utterly impotent. On the bridge of the absolute dominion where Vorenus stared at his tactical display with an expression approaching something he hadn't felt in 1,000 years. Fear. How? The word emerged as barely a whisper. How is this possible? Grand Admiral Voss was already working the problem, running analyses, checking sensor data. Her forearms moved with frantic precision across multiple consoles. Your Majesty, they're not fighting like separate ships. Every vessel is coordinated down to the microsecond. Every maneuver is perfectly synchronized. It's as if they share one mind, as if they're a single organism with thousands of bodies. That's exactly what we are. Ambassador Winter's voice emerged from every speaker on the bridge. His hologram materialized at the center of the command deck, and this time there was no patience in his expression, no gentle education, just sad, tired certainty. 3 centuries ago, Winter said, and his voice transmitted simultaneously to every ship in both fleets, humanity developed quantum neural linking, technology that allows every human in the sanctuary to connect our consciousness. Not a hive mind, we maintain individual thoughts, individual choices, individual identity, but connected. Able to share thoughts instantaneously across light years, able to coordinate actions with perfect precision, and able to think as one when the situation demands it, while remaining individuals when it doesn't. He gestured to the tactical display showing the battle. What you're fighting isn't 2,800 ships. Your Majesty, you're fighting an organism, a single living system with thousands of bodies. Every captain knows what every other captain is thinking. Every gunner fires in perfect synchronization. Every defensive maneuver is calculated collectively with processing power you cannot match. We don't have reaction time. We have instantaneous consensus. Vorenus found his voice, found his rage. This is unnatural, wrong, abomination. No species should have this kind of collective capability. We agree, Winter said quietly. That's one of the reasons we left. We were becoming something other than human, something that frightened us. So we isolated ourselves, gave ourselves time to understand what we'd become, to learn how to be individuals who could choose to think collectively when necessary, rather than a collective that merely pretended to be individuals. The battle continued. 7,000 Imperial ships now disabled. Human casualties 0. Human ships damaged 0. It wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration, a lesson, a warning delivered with such overwhelming force that resistance seemed pointless. Recall the fleet, Voss said urgently. Her tactical mind had already reached the inevitable conclusion. Your Majesty, we cannot win this engagement. They're not even fully committed, and they're destroying us. We need to fall back, regroup, reassess. They're not destroying anything, Vorenus snarled, but Drake could hear something new in the Emperor's voice. Uncertainty. The first crack in a millennium of absolute confidence. They're disabling, playing with us, showing off their capabilities. Exactly, Winters agreed. We're showing you what we can do, what we've been able to do for 3 centuries. Your Majesty, at any point in this engagement, we could have destroyed every ship in your fleet, killed every crew member, ended the Galactic Empire in an afternoon with a technology you can't defend against. He let that truth sink in. Let the Emperor process what it meant to be completely, utterly outmatched. But we're not doing that. We're disabling your ships while keeping your people alive, demonstrating that we can win without killing. Because that's who we chose to become. Not conquerors who prove strength through body counts. Protectors who are strong enough to show mercy even when mercy isn't strategically necessary. 9,000 ships disabled now. The remaining 1,000 Imperial vessels pulled back in disarray, forming a desperate defensive sphere around the Emperor's flagship. Officers shouting, crews panicking. The invincible armada reduced to refugees fleeing from an enemy that wouldn't even kill them. This is your last chance, Your Majesty, Winter said, to render, except that you cannot win this fight. Sign a treaty recognizing our sovereignty, and we'll restore your ships, repair the damage. Send you home with nothing more than wounded pride and a story about automated defenses too dangerous to challenge. And if I refuse? Vorenus's voice was barely controlled, fury wrapped around growing desperation. Winter's hologram shifted. Around the battlefield, space itself seemed to shimmer like heat rising from desert sand. Ships appeared, hundreds of them, thousands, emerging from stealth fields that made Imperial cloaking technology look like children playing hide-and-seek. They'd been there all along, watching, waiting, invisible. The human fleet tripled in size before the Emperor's eyes, 7,500 vessels, each one armed with weapons that made the demonstration attacks look gentle. Each one crewed by humans linked into that collective consciousness, each one capable of the same surgical precision that had already disabled 90% of the Imperial fleet. This is 10% of our defensive capability, Winter said quietly. The rest remains hidden, scattered across 50 star systems, all of it coordinated through quantum linkage, all of it ready to respond in microseconds if needed, all of it prepared to do whatever is necessary to protect our exile. He looked directly at Vorenus with those ancient, sad eyes. Your empire is 3,000 years old, powerful, vast, terrifying to most species in the galaxy, but old, comfortable. You haven't faced a real existential threat in millennia. You've forgotten what it means to fight for survival against an enemy that's your equal, or better. We, on the other hand, have spent 3 centuries preparing for this exact moment. Every human born in the sanctuary has trained for the day when our exile might be threatened. We are a civilization built on a single shared purpose, ensuring that humanity never again threatens galactic peace. And we will defend that purpose with everything we have, everything we've become. Winter stepped closer to the holographic camera, his image looming on every screen in both fleets. So I'm asking you one final time, Emperor Vorenus. Peace or annihilation, coexistence or extinction, mutual respect or mutual destruction. Choose wisely, because this is the last choice you'll ever make if you choose wrong. Drake watched from his bridge as the Emperor's flagship sat isolated, surrounded by 9,900 disabled vessels, outnumbered 7-1 by human forces that had demonstrated absolute undeniable superiority. The question was, would 1,000 years of pride allow Vorenus to surrender? For 30 seconds that felt like centuries, there was only silence across the comm channels. Then slowly Emperor Vorenus began to laugh. Not the confident laughter from before the battle, not the contemptuous dismissal of human warnings. This was different, broken, bitter. The sound of a being who'd lived a millennium without ever truly being humbled, finally understanding what that felt like. The laughter of someone whose entire worldview had just shattered. When the laughter finally died, Vorenus' voice was quiet, almost gentle. You've made your point, Ambassador. I'd underestimated you. Badly. Completely. Catastrophically. Voss's 4 hands gripped her console. Your Majesty, Vorenus raised one clawed hand. Silence. He was still Emperor. Still commanded authority even in defeat. But something had changed in his bearing. Something fundamental. I could order my remaining ships to fight, he said slowly. To die gloriously rather than surrender. To go down in history as warriors who never yielded even against impossible odds. You could watch them, Winters agreed, and I would disable them without killing a single crew member, and you would still surrender. but with thousands more witnesses to your defeat. With your entire empire knowing that you threw away lives for pride rather than accepting peace with wisdom. Varenus was quiet for another long moment. Drake could see the Emperor's internal struggle, could see 1,000 years of absolute certainty warring with the undeniable evidence before his eyes. Pride versus survival, arrogance versus wisdom, the conqueror versus the survivor. Finally, the Emperor's shoulders sagged almost imperceptibly. What are your terms? Relief flooded through Drake so intensely he had to grip his command chair to remain standing. Winter's hologram shifted to display a simple document. Clean, clear, no tricks, no hidden clauses. The Sanctuary Accords. Simple, straightforward. The Empire recognizes the Terran Sanctuary as sovereign territory comprising the 50 star systems within our beacon perimeter. No Imperial ships enter our borders without explicit permission from the Warden Council. No attempts to infiltrate, observe, or study us through covert means. In exchange, we remove ourselves completely from all galactic affairs. We don't expand beyond our current territory. Don't interfere in Imperial politics or conflicts. Don't involve ourselves in any matters outside our borders. We simply coexist, peacefully, with mutual respect for each other's sovereignty and mutual understanding that we're both stronger if we're not fighting. And if I agree to this, then we restore your ships immediately, repair any damage, provide technical assistance to get your fleet operational, send you home with a cover story about encountering automated defenses too dangerous to challenge defenses that we'll actually build and maintain, so your story holds up under scrutiny. You file the entire incident in your highest level classified archives. Level Omega security. Only you and your most trusted advisors ever know the full truth. Winters paused deliberately. And those children Admiral Drake rescued, they continued to their intended destination, safe, protected, with our blessing and our gratitude to your Admiral for his courage and compassion. Varenus looked at the tactical display, at 9,900 disabled ships, at the 7,500 human vessels surrounding him, at the absolute undeniable proof that he'd lost before the battle even truly began. And slowly he made a choice, not the easy choice, not the choice pride demanded, the wise choice. I agreed to your terms, he said quietly. Transmit the treaty document. I'll sign it. Around the human command nexus buried beneath Sanctuary Station 12 wardens allowed themselves to breathe for the first time in hours. Transmitting now, Winters said. The document appeared on the Emperor's personal console. He read it carefully, every word, every clause, looking for tricks or traps, finding none. Just exactly what Winters had promised, a simple agreement to respect boundaries and coexist peacefully. Emperor Varenus, ruler of the greatest empire in galactic history, architect of 1,000 years of expansion and conquest, picked up his stylus and signed his name. The war ended before it truly began. 3 hours later, human repair ships moved among the disabled Imperial vessels like doctors tending wounded, not capturing them, not salvaging them, restoring them. Drake stood on his bridge, watching human engineers work on Imperial ships with casual expertise that suggested they understood the systems better than the crews who operated them, fixing in minutes what should have taken weeks, restoring capabilities, leaving no backdoors, no monitoring systems, no secret access points, just functional vessels returned to their crews with nothing more than the knowledge of what had happened. Sir Valen said quietly. We're receiving a transmission from Sanctuary Station. Ambassador Winters requests your presence. Drake transported across, found himself in that same garden where he'd first learned the truth about humanity's exile. Winters was there looking older now, more tired, but profoundly relieved. We did it, the old man said simply. 3 centuries of preparation, 3 centuries of fear that this day would come and that we'd fail to prevent bloodshed. And we survived it, accomplished it, achieved what we set out to achieve, victory without a single death. You did more than survive, Drake said. You won, completely, overwhelmingly. We demonstrated capability, Winters corrected gently. That's different from winning. Winning would have meant we chose violence as our first response. We chose restraint instead. We chose to prove our strength through mercy rather than body counts. That's the real victory, not defeating the Empire, but remaining true to ourselves while doing it. He gestured to the bench beside the pond where holographic fish swam in endless circles. Sit, please. I wanted to thank you personally. For what? For buying us time, for trying to negotiate, for showing the Emperor that not all Imperial officers are mindless conquerors following orders without thought. You reminded us why we stayed hidden all these years. To protect not just ourselves, but people like you. Officers who still believe in doing the right thing even when regulations make it difficult. Drake sat, the bench adjusted to his cathrophysiology, somehow managing perfect comfort. What happens now? Now we return to our exile, rebuild our secrecy, fade back into myth and legend and half-remembered stories. The Emperor will keep his word. He has no choice, really. His pride won't allow the story of this defeat to spread through his empire. So it'll be classified, hidden, forgotten. And in a generation or two will be nothing but rumors again. Ghosts in the dark. Warnings from old spacers about places not to go. And the children are welcome to stay if they wish, or continue to their original destination, or choose any path they want. Winters smiled. Though I suspect a certain 7-year-old girl has already made her choice about what kind of future she wants. In the medical bay, Lara Ashford sat surrounded by human doctors and Imperial officers who'd come to check on the rescued children. The younger ones had been given options, continue to Meridian Colony, as originally planned stay with the humans in the sanctuary, or request placement in Imperial adoption services. Most chose the colony. Some chose Imperial adoption. A few of the older ones, the ones who'd seen too much violence and wanted nothing more than peace, chose to stay with the humans. Lyra had chosen differently. I want to be a bridge, she told Drake when he arrived. Her storm gray eyes were serious, determined. Like you, someone who talks to both sides, who helps people understand each other instead of fighting, someone who proves that peace is possible. Drake knelt beside her bed, bringing himself to her eye level. That's a difficult path, Lyra. It means never quite belonging to either side, always being caught in the middle, always trying to explain each side to the other. I don't belong anywhere anyway, Lyra said with the blunt honesty of children. My home is gone, my family is dead, my world is ash, but I can make something new, something better, something that means their deaths weren't for nothing. If you'll help me learn how. Drake looked at her small, serious face, saw determination beyond her years, saw hope that shouldn't have survived but had, saw strength forged in tragedy. I'll help, he promised, however I can, for as long as you need. 1 week later, a memorial service was held on Sanctuary Station Alpha 7. Not for the battle, no one had died in the battle, not a single human, not a single Imperial crew member, not even the pirates who'd started this entire crisis by attacking the refugee transport. The memorial was for something else, for the 3 centuries of exile, for the 137 humans who had died building the sanctuary during those long years of isolation. Colonists lost to equipment failures before life support systems were perfected. Scientists killed in experimental accidents as they pushed the boundaries of physics and engineering. Soldiers who fell defending the borders from pirates and raiders who saw isolated settlements as easy targets. Every name carved in black stone, every life remembered, every sacrifice honored. Drake attended along with a delegation of Imperial officers who'd witnessed what happened, who understood what restraint truly meant, who'd seen power coupled with mercy and recognized it as something rare, something precious. Commander Velen stood beside him, Dr. Oryx's tentacles coiled in the Zalani gesture of respect. Specialist Terran, all 4 hands crossed over his chest, and dozens of others who'd been changed by what they'd witnessed. Lyra stood at the memorial with the other children who'd chosen to remain. She placed a small flower at the base of the stone, a real flower grown in the station's gardens from earth seeds carried across 3 centuries. Her voice, soft but clear, carried across the gathered assembly. We remember those who chose peace over power, who built walls to protect, not to conquer, who proved that the strongest warriors are the ones who choose not to fight, who showed us that true victory means everyone survives. A human child no more than 10 years old, born in exile, never having seen Earth, stepped forward and began to sing, a hymn in ancient Earth language, words Drake didn't understand but felt in his bones. The others joined, human voices rising in harmony, singing for the dead, singing for the future, singing because some things transcended language and species in the vast gulfs between civilizations. When the ceremony ended, Drake found Elena Thorne standing beside him. What will you tell your people, she asked, the crew who witnessed this, the officers who saw what we can do, the empire that will want to know what happened here. The truth, Drake said, that we encountered automated defenses, incredibly advanced, dangerous beyond measure, that the Emperor signed a treaty classifying this sector as permanently forbidden territory, that no one should ever come here again, that some mysteries are better left unsolved. And will they believe you? The ones who matter will, The ones who understand that some truths are dangerous. The ones who don't, he shrugged. They'll think I'm exaggerating, creating myths to explain technology I didn't understand, manufacturing stories to cover my own limitations. Either way, your secret remains safe. Thank you, Admiral. Elena extended her hand in the human gesture of respect and farewell. For everything. For saving those children. For trying to find peace when war would have been easier. For being better than your empire deserves. For giving us hope that maybe someday the galaxy will be ready for us to return. Not as conquerors, but as friends. Drake shook her hand. We're not all conquerors. I know, that's why there's still hope. 12 years later. Admiral Theron Drake, retired now at 59, teaching at the Imperial War College on the Capital World, stood at the front of his classroom. 50 cadets, the future of the Imperial fleet. Eager, confident, certain of their superiority and the righteousness of Imperial might. He was teaching them about the Battle of Sanctuary, the official version sanitized and classified, automated defenses, treaty signed, forbidden territory. The lesson, he concluded, is that some battles are won not by fighting but by choosing not to fight. The Emperor recognized this wisdom, made a strategic decision that preserved Imperial lives and resources while acknowledging that some territories are not worth the cost of claiming. Sometimes retreat isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the wisest choice available. A cadet raised her hand, young, ambitious, decorated already, despite her youth. But sir, weren't we stronger? Couldn't we have destroyed those defenses if we'd committed fully? If we'd been willing to accept casualties? Drake smiled. After 12 years of teaching, he'd learned to recognize the arrogance of youth, the certainty that strength automatically translated to victory. Perhaps, perhaps not. The point is, we'll never know. Because we chose peace instead. And that choice, he paused for emphasis, that choice saved lives, built bridges, created possibilities that violence never could have achieved. The classroom door opened. A young woman entered, 19 years old, auburn hair pulled back in a professional style, storm gray eyes that carried intelligence and determination in equal measure. Wearing the uniform of the Imperial Diplomatic Corps with a small pin on her collar, a silver dove carrying an olive branch. The cadets stared. That pin was extraordinarily rare, reserved for diplomats assigned to the most sensitive negotiations, the most delicate missions, the work that prevented wars before they started. Cadet Ashford, Drake said warmly, right on time. Lyra smiled the genuine smile of someone who'd found her purpose and pursued it with everything she had. Ambassador Winters sends his regards, sir. He's asked me to deliver a guest lecture on cross-cultural communication and the importance of understanding before engagement. She moved to the front of the classroom with the confidence of someone who'd earned her position through merit and dedication. The cadets whispered among themselves. Who was this young officer with diplomatic credentials beyond her years? How had she earned that rare pin 12 years ago? Lyra began, and her voice carried the same strength Drake remembered from that freezing cargo bay. I was 7 years old, orphaned by war, rescued from a drifting transport by Admiral Drake when regulations said he should have waited for authorization, caught between two civilizations on the brink of destroying each other. And I learned something that day, something fundamental that I want to share with all of you. She gestured to the display behind her. Images appeared not of the battle but of the memorial, names carved in stone, flowers placed by children, humans and Imperials standing together in shared respect for sacrifice. Strength isn't about how many ships you can destroy, it's about how many lives you can save. Power isn't about forcing others to submit, it's about choosing restraint when you could destroy. Victory isn't about body counts, it's about everyone surviving to build something better. The cadets listened transfixed. Some looked skeptical, others thoughtful. A few seemed to understand on a deeper level. The humans Admiral Drake encountered showed me something I'll never forget. They demonstrated that the bravest warriors are the ones who choose not to fight, who are strong enough to show mercy, who understand that true victory means preserving life rather than taking it. She looked directly at Drake, smiled with genuine warmth and gratitude. That's what Admiral Drake taught me. By example, by choosing to rescue children instead of following regulations that would have let us die, by trying to negotiate instead of accepting war as inevitable, by being better than the system he served, by proving that one person making the right choice can change everything. After the lecture, after the cadets filed out, minds full of new ideas and challenging questions, Drake and Lyra walked through the academy gardens together. How is Ambassador Winters? Drake asked. Still refusing to retire. Stubbornly, he's 95 now and still working 16-hour days. Lyra laughed. But sharp as ever, he's been working with me on establishing formal communication protocols between the Empire and the Sanctuary. Nothing official, the treaty specifically prohibits formal relations. But quiet channels, ways for both sides to talk without violating the accords. Back channels for when misunderstandings need clarifying or potential conflicts need diffusing before they escalate. Is that wise? The treaty says no interference in each other's affairs, not no communication whatsoever. Lyra's smile was mischievous. There's a meaningful difference, and both sides agree that having at least one person who can bridge the gap is valuable. Hence, she touched her diplomatic pin. My unusual career path. You've accomplished more at 19 than most diplomats achieve in a lifetime. I had exceptional teachers. She looked at him seriously. You saved my life, Admiral. But more than that, you showed me what kind of person I wanted to become. Someone who builds bridges instead of walls, who chooses understanding over conflict, who proves that peace is possible even when war seems inevitable. They reached a small memorial garden. Drake's wife and son, dead 15 years before the sanctuary crisis a lifetime ago it seemed now. He visited every day he was on campus, maintaining the flowers, keeping their memory alive. Lyra stood beside him quietly. After a respectful moment, they would have been proud of you, of what you chose, of who you became, of the lives you saved and the peace you helped build. Drake's voice was rough. I hope so. I failed them once. Failed to be there when they needed me. I couldn't save them. But you saved 127 children who would have died. You saved 2 civilizations from a war that would have accomplished nothing but proving that violence breeds violence. You saved me. Lyra placed her hand on his arm. You can't change the past, but you shaped the future. That matters. That means something. They stood together in silence, teacher and student savior, and saved bridge builders both. Above them, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns. And somewhere in the darkness, hidden among forbidden stars, humanity continued its voluntary exile. Watching, waiting, preparing still because preparation never truly ended. But also hoping that the galaxy was learning, growing, becoming something better than what humanity had feared it might be. And in that hope carried forward by people like Lyra Ashford and Theron Drake and thousands of others, touched by what had happened there, was the possibility of something humanity had thought lost forever when they chose exile 3 centuries ago. Not conquest, not dominance, not power proved through destruction, but genuine lasting peace. Across the galaxy on Sanctuary Station, Alpha 7 Warden Elena Thorne stood before the memorial wall. Fresh names had been added, humans who had died in the 12 years since the crisis. Natural causes, age, accidents, the normal losses that came with living, each name remembered, each life honored. At the bottom, a new inscription had been carved. We chose exile so the galaxy could grow without our shadow. We chose restraint so others could learn that strength and mercy are not opposites. We chose hope over fear. And in the end, we chose to believe that someday the galaxy would be ready for us to return. Not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as partners in building something better than any one species could achieve alone. Warden Thorne placed her hand on the stone, smiled at memories of battles fought and won without bloodshed, of peace preserved through strength tempered with wisdom. Not yet, she whispered to the names carved in stone, to the sacrifices made, to the future waiting to unfold. But soon, maybe soon. Behind her, human children played in the gardens, children born after the crisis growing up in peace, learning from history, but not bound by it. And in their laughter, in their joy, in their innocent hope for a future without war, humanity's 300-year gamble finally revealed its true purpose. The exile had worked, the lesson had been taught, and somewhere between the stars, 2 civilizations learned to share space without destroying each other. The ancient beacons around Terran space activated one final time. New message broadcasting. Updated. Changed. Not the harsh warning of before. Something different now. Something that spoke to what had been achieved. Terran sanctuary, protected by treaty, partnership respected, wisdom honored, peace maintained. Some borders exist not to divide, but to allow different ways of living to flourish. Respect this boundary and know that beyond it lies not threat, but hope that the galaxy can be better than its past. And in that simple declaration, 300 years of human history came full circle. From conquerors to exiles to guardians, from warriors to peacemakers, from threat to hope. The transformation was complete. The exile would continue. But now, for the first time in 3 centuries, humanity knew they weren't alone in believing peace was possible. That one person's choice to save children could cascade into empires reconsidering their paths. That restraint, demonstrated at the moment of ultimate strength, could teach lessons that conquest never could. That the galaxy, slowly, painfully, imperfectly, was learning. And in that knowledge, carried in the hearts of a 7-year-old girl who'd grown into a bridge between worlds, lived the greatest victory of all. Not defeating enemies, but creating friends. The beacon's new message broadcast into the void, and this time the galaxy listened and learned and began, however slowly, to change.